If you're interested in technical education, it's not just black and white, it's gray too. Learn what we're talking about coming up next on Carolina View. For technical and comprehensive education, Dan Gray. Good morning, Dan.
Oh, Ray, nice to see you.
Thank you for coming in.
Good way to have a cup of coffee.
Absolutely, early on a Tuesday morning.
Yes,
of course, Johnny Rockets normally didn't open for breakfast, so it's great to be able to get in here early in the morning.
Yeah, they were nice enough to make a pot of coffee for me.
Absolutely, and you drank almost all of it. You didn't save much for me, but thanks. They're doing a great job in this place. These seats here, and of course the nice little jukebox. It's a sweet setup.
I love Johnny Rockets, and it reminds me of my earlier years, and I love flipping through the music, and I love the entertainment that they provide, and of course the fabulous hamburgers.
Oh yeah. You've been out here before. It's not your first time.
Yeah. Times, yeah.
And they've got one up at Barefoot Landing as well. It's very popular.
They're doing well.
Yeah. Recently, I think a football team owner bought the company. They still have the 200 franchisees, but Johnny Rockets has just changed hands.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Very interesting setup. Real quick about yourself, Dan. Are you originally from the area?
Yes, I was born here in 1941. I got my Medicare card last July. So I'm an OAR, that's older adult / retiree. But I was born here in 41 and grew up here. And my family on my mother's side goes back to sometime in the 1730s in Horry County.
1730s in this county?
Yes.
Wow. Was the county, at that time, have you ever seen maps of it at that time? Was it still, did it follow the PD River there and, as a demarcation line, or was it smaller or even larger back then? Do you know?
Kingston, I believe it was called, was originally an outpost out of Charleston as kind of a sanctuary for people who would attack Charleston. And that's how Kingston, now Conway, was originally established. And the lines, the political lines as we see them now, didn't exist at that time.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Sure, the 43 or 46 counties in the state, we wouldn't have seen anything like that.
No, not at all.
But surely there were people living here, and you said the 1730s.
Yeah. Most of what we know as Horry County today was settled between the 1730s and the 1750s. That's about as far back as there's really any record of permanent residence. And of course, Horry County's growth was very, very slow right on up until fairly modern times, within, say, the last 50 years.
Right. Oh, it has been, absolutely. And we talked earlier this morning. We want to talk more about that later as we go through the interview about your experiences on the Planning Commission and helping set up the comprehensive plan when we think about growth these days. But, when you think about growing up, did you principally grow up were you born in Conway or were you born here in Myrtle Beach?
Both.
Now that's
my mother was in Myrtle Beach, but the only hospital was in Conway. So technically I was overnighted, so to speak, at Old Conway Hospital in downtown Conway. But I consider myself as having been born in Myrtle Beach. That was just the only place to go. Many people who were born here at that time were born at home. So,
is that right? Sure.
But I grew up on 4th Avenue North in Myrtle Beach, right beside the First Baptist Church parsonage. As a matter of fact, my home in my growing up years is still there.
Is that right?
It's owned by the First Baptist Church. It's used as a mission building, and they call it the Gray House.
They call it the Gray House. I did not know that. Is it behind the church there, or I'm trying to picture it? I know
it would be across 4th Avenue, right from the main sanctuary.
Okay.
And right beside the parsonage. It's sort of across 4th Avenue, right behind.
Sure.
The church.
I think I remember, Dan, in one of our interviews a couple years ago, either when we were out at Horry Georgetown Tech or when we were in Florence, Darlington, up there in right over the county line in Darlington County. I believe you shared with us that growing up, everything was virtually within a four block area.
For me,
right?
It was a time in the late 40s and early 50s when you could just turn your children out and hope they came home, and of course we all did, and when it started getting dark. But I was 4 miles from the main city center, 4 blocks from the main city center. The schoolhouse was 1 block away where the post office is now.
Right.
And Withers Wash was 4 blocks away. The ocean was a couple of blocks away. It was just a huge playground for me and all of the children in the neighborhood.
Sure. You remember it vividly, Dan.
Oh, yes. I started selling newspapers on the street when I was 10. And,
Really?
Yeah, I sold newspapers for 3 years in the summers and had other jobs at grocery stores and so forth.
Did you make pretty good money?
Yeah, I made more money than I could spend. I only got 1.5 cents a paper.
Oh, wow.
Paper was only a nickel.
Right.
And,
but it was a daily.
Well,
it was
the main paper that we sold was the Charlotte Observer.
Oh, really?
In the morning and the Charlotte News in the afternoon. And on Thursday afternoons, we'd have, I would sell 100 papers a day. And on Thursday afternoons, I had 5 copies of the Myrtle Beach News and 5 copies of the Myrtle Beach Sun. I couldn't give them away.
No.
So I'm sorry to confess this, but I would just take my tips and buy those papers.
Is that right?
Oh, yeah. People were not interested in. The papers were separate at that time.
They were interested in the Charlotte News.
Oh, Myrtle Beach could not be where it is today without the Charlotte visitors and surrounding areas, Gastonia and High Point.
Sure.
But the paper of record in this area at that time was the Charlotte Observer.
That's fascinating. That's one thing I've never heard, Dan. I'm glad you opened that up because
and the Charlotte News.
Right, sure. And of course, I don't know when it happened that the state newspaper in Columbia and the Charlotte newspaper were owned for a good number of years, maybe mid-'80s owned by Knight Ridder, and of course they then later purchased the Sun News and expanded quite a bit.
All fine papers.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Now all owned by McClatchy, who has the Raleigh News and Observer and the Hilton Head paper. They continue to expand and continue to do great things in the community. You know, when you think of it, and did you attend? So you attended school here? Did you go to college in this area, Dan?
I was a student at Clemson. I graduated Clemson in 1963.
Is that right?
Graduated high school in 59.
Right.
Everybody did college in 4 years at that time because that was all the money you were going to get.
That's all the money you get.
And if you were lucky enough to go to college.
Right.
So I graduated Clemson with a Bachelor of Science degree in industrial management.
Is that right? And did you come home straight after college?
No, my first job was with the Southern Railway System. Now it's Norfolk Southern. You can see their ads on television. They have a Mustang horse train, but that was my first quote-unquote career job, a real job. Of course, at that time, everybody had to deal with their military obligation. We had the Universal Draft. And I had a side job with the United States Marine Corps. So I did college.
Side job.
Well, you have some active duty and reserve duty.
Right.
Active reserve duty. And but I did college and Marine Corps and my first job with Southern Railway System all in the same time period.
Right, sure.
Right after graduating college, during college.
You know, I wanted to ask you that a second ago, Dan. I'm sorry I didn't. When you're driving around that area around 4th Avenue North now in 2007, and you think back on your youth, are there images that you see that really stand out in your mind when you're in your truck or in your car driving around? What are some of those images that jump out at you when you're driving around that area?
I do take trips to the 4th Avenue. As a matter of fact, I walked out of the First Baptist Church just a few weeks ago and walked over to the Gray House. I walked on the front porch. And one of my jobs to help out around the house was to rake and mow the yard. At the time when I was a kid, it seemed like it was a pasture. And now it looks like a postage stamp. And,
wow.
And the house itself is still a fairly large house, but at the time it was, now it seems much smaller. And certain things are the same. Withers Wash has a move. Atlantic Ocean has a move.
Right.
the old town center hasn't moved, but the appearance of it is. Witherswash doesn't exist anymore. It's basically a drainage ditch now.
Right.
And the Atlantic Ocean was mostly beach cottages. Now you high rises.
They're seeing high rises.
Condo Canyon, as they call it.
Sure, we looked at
And of course, the downtown really needs some redevelopment.
But Broadway was still one of those streets that were within four blocks of your home.
Yeah, Broadway was the road to Conway. 501 didn't exist.
Really?
As in the location as we know it.
Right.
And that went to, I believe it was called they had to cut that through the Impassable Bay, I believe it was called. One of the big Carolina bays that we have. But the general route that we know today from Myrtle Beach to Socastee and then on to Conway, that was the way you went to Conway.
That was the only way you'd get to Conway.
That was on the road in.
Yeah.
And so Broadway was the entrance part into Myrtle Beach.
That's fascinating. And of course, it would still end. It would have kind of a similar ending there, where I guess where 501 is now, or where the train depot is, where it would kind of have its
Well,
current.
now you have an intersection. I think they call it 5 Points, but where the Broadway meets Main Street, and you run right into the downtown area. Of course, the train depot, which was running at the time, as we're speaking with passenger trains. One of the most memorable reprimands that I have is the time that my cousin and I slipped aboard a passenger train. We just thought we wanted to take a train ride. We were 5 or 6 years old.
No.
Oh, yeah.
You're kidding.
Oh, yeah. Of course, the conductor
Quickly
conducted us off to the train in Conway, and our parents came to get us, and then they gave us a good talking to.
Oh, I bet. Probably a little more than that, Dan. You don't have to get into it, but golly, that's something. And you've got even memories of that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, clearly. Wow.
When they were building what's now the First Baptist Church main sanctuary, there was a big hoisting rope right in the center of the roof of the church. And we would swing from the balcony down to the vestibule and yell at Tarzan. We would slip over every big playground. Oh, yeah.
Wow, man. You know, obviously, much of our focus has got to be on the South Carolina Technical and Comprehensive Education. Obviously, you've been active in this position for a good while. Have been very supportive. I think your dad was one of the founders of Horry Georgetown Technical College and instrumental. And did that help set the stage for you, for your interest in the appointment, when the appointment came a few years ago, for you to serve on the state board?
Well, we as a family have always been very interested in Horry Georgetown Tech, and by extension, the State Technical College system.
Right.
And the mission of the State Technical College has always been very important to our family. As you mentioned, my dad, he turned 91 in January.
Is that right?
He was the first chair at Horry Georgetown Tech, and he served in, I think it was 1980 to 88. And that was when Horry Georgetown Tech was opened at that period. And I was involved at Horry Georgetown Tech. I was an instructor out there at night during this first year.
Really?
Yes.
And what years were those again?
I think I recall the Tech opened in 1966. That's right. They just celebrated their 40th anniversary.
Right. 1966.